below. Hello and welcome to another webinar as part of our International Approval and Global Market Access webinar series. I'm Kevin, I'm an administrative assistant at Vista Labs, and today we will be going over Russia's market access for electronics and electrical products. So the commonly named Starting with an overview of the major conformity assessment authorities in the EU and Russia. The Eurasian Economic Commission, formerly known as the Eurasian Customs Union, publishes technical regulations, list of standards applicable for regulations and certifications and declaration schemes to approve equipment and goods within Eurasia. EAC, CU, TRCU are common names for Russian/Eurasian conformity and pertains to the EMC, safety, and ROHS. The FAC, Telecom Certification and Declaration System, is a part of Russian national regulation, so it's on the national level. FAC regulation is applicable on Russian territory only for selling and operating of telecom equipment. FAC regulation has nothing to do with the EAEU, the CU, TR, and safety and EMC, and any other regulations. They only do telecom and radio. FSS and FSB notification is a notification by manufacturers for devices with encryption and cryptographic functionality, and there are other assessment schemes as well. Ghost approval and Ghost R marking was withdrawn in February of 2013, but still exists for products not covered under TR, such as batteries, radio frequency conclusion, or RFC for high-frequency RF devices. So what is EAC? EAC is a product marking, which means Eurasian conformity. It shows approval for products imported to the Customs Union, aka Eurasian Customs Union, or the CU. This mark provides access to Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan, allowing suppliers to distribute products throughout the entire territory of these countries, which is roughly about 180 million people. This marking is applicable in all industries, such as automotive, chemicals, and food market, and etc. But we are focusing on the EMC and electrical safety field, and etc. EAC approval is a singular harmonized approval certificate for EMC and or safety for certain products, which means that it will cover multiple requirements such as nuclear safety, and it also will cover all member states in the Union. Supplied products must conform to all the requirements of the Customs Union Technical Regulations, which is currently the Eurasian Economic Union, TRCU, or TREAU, in order to apply this mark. Almost any product imported into Russia requires the TRCU certification and mark, and the mark helps provide assurance of product compliance with existing safety, technical, and quality standards. The electrical products must meet technical requirements of the EAEU to be placed on the Russian market. The EAEU technical regulations contain mandatory requirements for EMC and safety aspects. The requirements of the EAEU technical regulations can be met by conforming with TRs through the application of relevant standards. This non-exhaustive list, the technical regulations particularly relevant to electrical products, are highlighted. Now an overview of the different EAC approval schemes. So we have the TRCU Certificate of Conformity and the TRCU Declaration of Conformity, the DOC. The main difference between them is that when declaring, the manufacturer conducted the test themselves, applying for this to a testing laboratory accredited by the Federal Accreditation Services, and on the basis of the results obtained, which are the test reports, registers a declaration of conformity of the means of communication with the federal agency communication. During certification, the issuance of conformity registered by the Federal Communications Agency is carried out by a certification body, which in turn enters into a test agreement with a testing laboratory, and based on the result makes a decision on issuing or not issuing a certificate of conformity. The product type determines whether the applicable scheme is COC or DOC. The biggest difference in the process between COC and DOC is that the certificate of conformity requires a factory inspection and CU-specific inspection report. It is important to note that COC and DOC conforming to TRCU and TR is different. Russia has its own technical regulations, TR, and only applies to Russia, while TRCU is for the EAEU. Some of the products that are regulated under the EAC are things such as ITE, audio-video equipment, household appliances, wireless and wired telecommunication equipment, scientific instrumentation and measurement equipment, and medical equipment. In Russia, the former GHOST certification system was withdrawn in February 2013 and replaced by the new Customs Union CU regime. Existing certificates issued prior to February 2013, including GHOST, is no longer valid. So next we need to determine if EMC and or LVE equipment requirements are applicable. All electronic products must adhere to EMC requirements. The most common group of products that are exported to the Eurasian Economic Union are devices that work at a nominal voltage of 50 VAC through 1000 VAC inclusively, or of 75 VDC through 1500 VDC inclusively. Then the LVE low voltage equipment and RHS restriction of hazardous equipment substances requirements are applicable. The next step is to determine if the certification mandatory for the equipment based on product type, electrical parameters, HS code, radio standards, and telecom standards that apply. The procedure depends on the product type. If the certificate of conformity is required, then the approval can be finalized only after a production site audit for quality management system review and tests of samples in the accredited certification laboratory on the territory of EAEU. Usually TRCU 020 EMC is to be accompanied by TRCU 004 LVD. This means that one approval document can include both regulations. TRCU declaration or certificate of conformity is required for customs clearance. So what are the products regulated under the EMC technical regulations of the EAU? And these came in 2013. They include the certification of conformity, which is things such as household electrical apparatus such appliances, personal electronic computers and peripherals, electrical tools, and musical instruments. Things that are covered under the Declaration of Conformity, products aren't not covered under the certification of conformity, things such as industrial electrical products. And there are some exempt products such as wires, cords and cables, light bulbs, and induction motors. Usually the EMC technical regulations are also accompanied by the low voltage equipment technical regulation, so one approval document can cover both of these. Next we'll be moving on to low voltage equipment. So here we have a list of LVE regulated products. The items that need a certification of conformity include cables, wires, and cords. electrical apparatus and household equipment, electrical tools, personal electronic data processing machines such as personal computers, LVE peripherals connected to data processing machines, lighting products, electrical musical instruments, and devices for electrical energy distribution, regulation, and control. And then items that need a declaration of conformity are products that are not covered under the certification of conformity, such as industrial electrical products. Here we have items that are regulated by the ROHS. So items that need a declaration of conformity include electrical apparatus and household equipment, electronic computing machines and peripherals, telecom terminal devices, electrical tools, and lighting equipment. And some of the products that are exempt are electrical apparatuses intended for use at rated voltages greater than 1000 VAC and 1500 VAC. Electronic toys, measuring instruments, and medical devices. Here we have what is needed for the declaration of conformity. So some of the requirements are that you need a CB test reports with CB certificate, CE EMC report, application form and technical description, a user manual in the Russian language, draft label with necessary marking requirements, and an ISO 9001 certificate and report of factory inspection. Other requirements will be that you need a local representative, and the lead time is about 2 to 4 weeks, and it is valid for a period of 1 to 5 years, and that is decided by the applicant. Some of the responsibilities include providing a copy of the TRCU Declaration of Conformity when products are imported into Russia, and this is mandatory for customs. Family model groupings are allowed, and any addition to product modifications require new approval, and minor changes do not require it, such as color changes. And if any non-compliance were to happen, importation is not allowed, and there is penalties in the case of a sale. But just for a note, shipments to Kazakhstan and Belarus must have a manual that is translated into the respective local languages as well. There's strict market surveillance to confirm that this requirement is being met. Whether the manual is a single, multilingual, or separate guide in each language is up to the manufacturer. And a hard copy user manual must be supplied with the product. In accordance with the Customs Union legislation, a foreign manufacturer must have a local representative company, an applicant on the territory of the Customs Union to issue the certificate and declaration. This means that an applicant for you must be your customer, distributor, or official representative in the CU. If any changes take place, you should inform the certification body to assume whether new approvals should be issued or not. If any changes are to be added to the product, then new approval is needed. So here we have the certification requirements. So some of the requirements include in-country testing, CB test reports with CB certificate, CE EMC report, application forms and a technical description, user manual in Russian language, draft label with necessary marking requirements, an ISO 9001 certificate and report of factory inspection, and a TRCU authorized factory inspection report. Other requirements include a local representative, and the lead time is between 4 and 6 weeks, and it is valid between 1 and 5 years, and this is chosen by the manufacturer. The responsibilities include providing copies of the TRCU Certificate of Conformity when products are imported into Russia, and yearly inspections. Family model groupings is allowed, and if any changes take place, you should inform the certification body to assume whether new approvals should be issued or not. Customs Union certification system does not assume the renewal process. This means that the certification process must be repeated, including tests, production site audit if required. After all the procedures are done, you will receive a new approval document. So some of the labeling and marking requirements are the size must be at least 5 millimeters. The mark can be placed in any way that provides a clear visibility during the entire service life of the product. A single mark is applied to each unit of production, packaging, or accompanying documentation such as a manual or brochure. The EAC image should be monochrome and contrast with the color of the surface on which it is applied. Markings, signs, and inscriptions that can be misleading are not allowed. Other conformity marks on the product should not impair the visibility, clarity, or readability of the EAC mark. And here we have an example of the DOC and the COC as well. So here we have an overview of the major conformity assessment authorities. So we have the EEC, which is the Eurasian Commission, and they do EMC, safety, and ROHS. We have the FAC, which is the Federal Communication Agency, and they do telecom and radio. And then we have the FSS, which is the Federal Security Service, and they do cryptographic functionality. The FAC and Telecom Certification Declaration System is a part of Russian national regulation, so it's on the national level. FAC regulation is applicable on Russian territory only for selling and operating of telecom equipment. FAC has nothing to do with the EAEU, and any other regulations. And all the products with RF modules and wired telecommunication products are subject to Russian telecom approval. And then telecommunications network used for commercial purposes to transfer data. It can be wirelessly connected to CTN. And examples are GSM, CDMA, UMTS, LTE, Wi-Fi, and so on and so forth. It can be physically connected to CTN via wires. Examples are PSTN phones, fax machines, routers, servers, and etc. So what is FAC? The Federal Communications Agency is responsible for providing public services, the management of state property, and law enforcement functions in the field of communication and information. All equipment that connect either directly or indirectly to the public telecom network or any equipment or software is used to provide a telecom service should be approved by the FAC. Voluntary approval, no penalty for violations, no product marking required, no limitation to import, clear customs and sales without telecom approval. Consumers, corporations, and buyers do not recognize, purchase, or use non-FAC approved equipment. Other restrictions when operating non-FAC approved devices. FAC is a Russian national authority, and FAC approvals are a national level system, and it is not recognized in any other EAEU countries. This ensures the implementation of interstate and federal programs in the field of communication and information. So here we have an overview of the FAC approval schemes. So we have the Certificate of Conformity, COC, and the Declaration of Conformity, the DOC. So here is a diagram of the FAC approval process. We have to determine which certification is mandatory for the equipment based on product type, electrical parameters, HS code, radio standards, and telecom standards that apply. The FAC DOC process consists of samples, testing, documents, product spec descriptions, and a local representative, and etc. FAC COC process consists of processes such as QMS audit, samples, testing, documents, product spec and description, a local representative, annual QMS inspections or testing, and etc. We also have our diagram here to show a breakdown of the process as well. And here we have a list of regulated product scopes. So we have the Declaration of Conformities, and that includes antennas, wireless phones, satellite systems, cables, office PBX, mobile phones, modems, network equipment, radio terminal equipment, data transmission systems, television equipment, fax machines, and power supplies. And things that are under the certification of conformity include switches, wireless access equipment, radio broadcasting equipment, radio modem, transmission systems, data transmission systems, cellular mobile communications, satellite systems, network access tools, office PABX, and telecom terminal equipment. And here we have the DOC process. So it starts with the submission of application documents and test reports. We prepare the FAC recognized report and draft the DOC, an application for the FAC registration. DOC is then registered, or corrective actions are then required. It is possible to issue new CBCE reports according to FAC and telecom requirements based on your existing ones, without retesting if they find all necessary technical information in your test reports and documentations. The first two blocks can take about 2 weeks, and then FAC registration is about 2 weeks, and the lead time is determined by the FAC. The last block takes another week, and then if refused, then update the documents or declaration draft and then start over. But however, this is not common. So here we have a list of the declaration requirements. So the requirements is that testing generally is not required. Samples, QMS audit, application forms, technical descriptions, and other documentation as well. Some of the other requirements are that there also needs to be a local representative. The lead time is usually around 4 weeks. The validity is no expiry, but we recommend 5 years. Their modular approval is allowed. Family model grouping is not allowed. Product modification, so if there is any addition to the product, it will require new approval. However, minor changes such as color change will not require new approval. And for labeling, there is no special markings or labels. And non-compliance can incur penalties in the case of sale and usage. So looking at the COC process, so it starts with the submission of application documents and test sample, the functionality testing and FSS investigative testing, registration of certification of conformity with the FAC, and issuance of certification of conformity, and then also investigative testing, if applicable, for devices using encryption or cryptography. And this whole process can take around 3 to 4 months, but it is not likely to be refused the issuance of certificate of conformity. So some of the certification requirements are that in-country testing is required, samples, QMS audit, application forms and technical descriptions, and other documentation as well. Some of the other requirements is that a local representative is optional, however it is not required for the FAC COC. The lead time is 8 to 10 weeks, but there are some projects that take up to 16 weeks as well. The validity is for 3 years at most, and modular approval is allowed. Responsibilities include annual inspection, and family model grouping is allowed, and if changes take place, you should inform your certification body to assume whether new approvals should be issued or not regarding product modification. However, if it is a minor change, such as a color change, it is not required. and there are no special markings or labels. And the penalties is that no administrative responsibility for violation, yet for manufacturers and their representatives, but the changes are in process. And here we have an example of the DOC and COC as well. So continuing on, we have covered the Eurasian Commission, which covers EMC, safety, and ROHS. We have covered the FAC, which is the Federal Communication Agency, which covers telecom and radio. And the last thing is we're going to cover FSS, which is the Federal Security Service, and they cover cryptographic functionality. So what is FSS/FSB? The Federal Security Service, FSS, is the principal security agency of Russia. Its main responsibility includes counterintelligence, internal and border security, counterterrorism, and surveillance. All products that are incapable of encryption need to be approved in the Federal Security Service. The FSS notification is a formal statement of permission to use the means of cryptographic encryption within a device in Russia. The FSS notification is a mandatory document which is required to be provided during the customs clearance process in Russia. The FSS notification for each exact model must be registered only once. Other importers can use the notification without additional permissions from the original notification holder, and there are no special national markings for the FSS notification. So here is the FSS approval process. So we need to determine if the certification is mandatory for the equipment based on product type, electrical parameters, HS code, radio standards, and telecom standards that apply. The FSS process requires POA, documents, and etc. And here we have the flowchart for this process. So here we have the FSS regulated product scope. This includes printers, photocopiers, and fax machines and their electronic modules which have encryption functions. Devices of computers with the functions of encryption, electronic modules and parts of handheld machines that have encryption, base stations that have cryptographic functions, telecommunication equipment and its parts with the function of encryption, equipment for broadcasting or television and its parts with the function of encryption, radio navigation receivers, remote control equipment and parts thereof with encryption, electronic integrated circuits, memory devices that have encryption functions or contain cryptographic means, access equipment to the information and communication network of the Internet, and television receivers with the communication functions with encryption. And some exemptions, so previously the main defining characteristic that determined whether it is necessary to get FSS approval or not was the ability of the device to encrypt the data. Now we should also take into consideration means of encryption means, which means that if the product is capable of encryption but cannot be classified as one of the means from the list, the FSS notification is not required. If exempt, then an FSS exemption letter will be issued that can be used as evidence while importing the goods. So here is an example of an FSS notification. So a local representative is required, a lead time of around 4 weeks. The validity is that it does not expire. Family model groupings are allowed. And if in non-compliance, the importation is not allowed. So these are all three of the major conformity assessment authorities. So we have the EAC, which is the Eurasian Commission, which covers EMC, safety, and ROHS. The FAC, which is the Federal Communication Agency, which covers telecom and radio. And then we also have the FSS, which is the Federal Securities Service, which covers cryptographic functionality. So there are other certifications as well, but we also need to remember about the GHOST approval and GHOST R marking, which was withdrawn in 2013, but still exists for products not covered under TR, such as batteries. RFC as well for high-frequency RF devices. Thank you for joining our webinar today about Russia. I know it was a lot of information, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to send them over to info@vistacompliance.com. Vista Compliance is a 17025 accredited EMC RF compliance test lab in the electrical field, as well as a 17065 accredited product certification body, and recognized globally under the Mutually Recognition Agreement, and also provides certification for over 150 countries. If you have any questions regarding these things, feel free to send us an inquiry at vistacompliance.com, and I look forward for you to joining our webinar next month.